let's say if this is your data set given to you. So what you will do is you will try to reduce this data, or you can say you will try to convert this data and ensure that your mean for every feature is 0. So what you're trying to do is you are trying to ensure that this data is actually centered at the origin. So let's say this data set now looks like this. So certain points will come here and certain points will come here. So this is so far like the very preliminary step that your PCA does. Uh, like while you are implementing this PCA, another thing that you should ensure is that the data is standardized. This means that all the features, what you could do is like all the features should be projected in the range, let's say A to B. Or more specifically, let me say that all the features are projected between a range 0 to 1 or let's say -1 to 1. These are the preferable ranges in which you would want to project each feature. So before even starting anything with your data set, what you do is you ensure that the data is centered around the origin. So basically you subtract the mean from all the samples and ensure that the range of each feature is between either 0 to 1 or -1 to 1. That is what like people do. So this is like a pre-processing step. Now, as we discussed yesterday, that we are interested in finding a, let's say, so this is a two-dimensional data set. So we are interested in finding, let's say, one-dimensional, let's say I'll be projecting this two-dimensional data onto say a one-dimensional space, ensuring that my variance is maximized. So let me just say that this is that new, basically new dimension. Let me call this dimension as U1. Okay, let me just call 1 second. So let me just call this dimension as U1. Now, assume that this dimension maximizes the variance along this direction. Okay. So U1 is essentially nothing. If you look at U1, U1 is, let's say, nothing. So U1 is a mixture of some component of X1 and some component of X2. And let me just do one more thing. So I'll ensure that the norm of U1 is equal to 1. Basically, the length of, so I am only interested in ensuring, or I am only interested in finding out this direction U1, which maximizes the variance, right? And let's say I know that all my feature values are between say -1 to 1. Okay, so if I can make a vector, so I only need to know this direction, right? So what I can do is just let me just give me a second. So instead of using this U1, what I'll do is I'll try to ensure that the norm of U1 is equal to 1. Basically, the length of this vector is equal to 1. So assume that you have standardized your data. So for simplicity's sake, let's assume it that this is right now between 0 to 1. So what I'm going to do now is I'll take this direction U1 and ensure that the length of this vector is equal to 1. What I mean by that is the norm of this U1 is equal to 1. I hope you know what is meant by a norm. So let's say this U1 is represented with an equation, say AX1 plus BX2, say equals to some constant, say some. So because the intercept term is 0, so this equation would look like this. Because this particular vector is passing through origin. So this equation would look like this. So the norm of this vector U1 would be nothing but the sum of the squares of the coefficients of the individual terms. So the coefficient of x1 is a and the coefficient of x2 is b. So the norm would be under root of a square plus b square. So these are a few things that you have to keep in mind. I'll come to that. Why do we ensure this norm is kept to 1? This would be clear when we talk about the equations. Like how do we, when we achieve this u1, it will be clear to you like why we are setting the norm of u1 to be 1. Okay. So for now, I mean, bear with me that we are trying to figure out a dimension, a new space, or you can say a new axis along which we are trying to ensure that the variance is maximized. Okay, so let's assume that this u1 is that particular dimension where the variance is maximized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to project all of my data points onto this new dimension. And assuming that the variance is maximized, this u1 gives me, let's say, whatever is, so these are some distances. Let me call them d1, d2, d3, d4, d5, d6. So we discussed yesterday that whichever dimension gives us the least projection error, basically, if you have any doubts, you can unmute yourself in between and we can discuss more about it. Okay, so along this dimension u1, if we can find out the projection error, which is nothing but d1 plus d2 up to these distances d6. So whichever dimension gives us this least projection error. So basically we have to minimize these distances. So whichever gives us this least projection error, that is like our first, you can say, our first axis along which we will project our data. The next axis that you will see would be, let's say, let me just rub this. Just 1 second, please. So this was our dimension u1. What I will do is I will try to, so let's say this u1 captures maybe say 70% of the variance. And I'm not satisfied with this 70% of my variance. I want to look at another dimension. So basically in this particular case, reducing the dimensions didn't help me much. So I'm also interested in looking at the second dimension, which is capturing, say, 30% of my variance. So the next dimension or the next axis that you will draw would be nothing but perpendicular to this u1. And let me just call this as u2. The same conditions will hold. The norm of u2 will be equal to 1. And another constraint that you could see from this picture is that because these axes are orthogonal, so if you take the dot product of these u1s and u2s, that will come out to be 0. Similar is the case with like your original axis x1 and x2. These axes are like orthogonal to each other, right? The same way, in PCA, first we figure out that very first dimension which maximizes the variance. And afterwards, if you want to pick more dimensions, we pick another axis which is orthogonal to orthogonal to u1, and we proceed. I mean, if you want to figure out one more dimension, let me call this as say u3. So u3 will be orthogonal to u1 and u2. So you can visualize it in terms of say x, y, and z, where x, y, and z are orthogonal to each other. Okay, and where x, y, z are the, let's say, the original coordinates in your 3D Cartesian space. Okay, so let me just discuss like how do you, figure out like what is u1, u2, and u3. Okay. So let me just begin with this. Okay, so I hope that everyone knows how to compute the mean. So basically you sum up all the individual entities and divide it by the cardinality of the number. or basically cardinality of the number of rows. So if this is your data set, you'll try to figure out a mean by summing up across these individual entities and dividing it by the number of rows in this data set. So essentially, if I have, say, one-dimensional data set 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll sum it up. So the sum would be 4, 3, 7, 9, 1, 10 by 4. So the mean would be close to 2.5. I mean, exactly 2.5. So what we have to do is we have to subtract the mean from each of the individual entities. And then we are going to figure out what this U1 is. Now, as I told you that U1 is trying to maximize the variance in the projected space. See, U1 is our dimension in which we are trying to ensure that the data that is projected onto this dimension has its variance maximized. Now, if you recall the formula for variance, the formula for variance is this. So you subtract the mean from each individual point, square it up, and then sum it up across all the data points. Now, this is the variance in the original space. Okay. Just a second, please. So if you look at this, sorry, this is not really needed. Yeah. So this is the variance in the original space. So this is nothing but equivalent to like what I wrote a few seconds earlier. So you can write this as xi minus x bar into xi minus x bar whole transpose. So this is just written in its matrix format. If this is not clear to you, let me just give you an example. Like, how did I write this to this? Okay, so your point xi is a d-dimensional point. Just a second, please. So your point xi is a d-dimensional point. So if I am interested in computing the variance of this d-dimensional point, so first of all, you should imagine this d-dimensional point as a column vector. So this is like one data point xi, where this denotes the first dimension, say d1. This denotes the value of the dimension d2, and so on and so forth. So if it is d-dimensional, there would be d such values there. Okay, so there are d such values in this particular data point xi. Now, assume that I have, say, two such data points. Let me just take a two-dimensional example. So this is, say, x1. The values are 2, 3. This is x2. The values are, say, 3, 4. The mean of, so let me just compute the mean of these. So mean of these would be 5 by 2 and 7 by 2. So this is the mean vector. Okay. And if you substitute it here, summation of, say, xi minus x bar whole square, you would get some scalar entity. So this would be like, if I represent in matrix format, let me just write it in this way. So the values that you have, basically, if I represent the value x, the given data set, that is 2, 3, and 3, 4. So this is our x1 and this is our x2. Now you know that your variance that you're trying to figure out, because we are actually looking at, so if you look at this variance, xi minus x bar into xi minus x bar transpose. So if each individual point xi, this is nothing but, we know that this each individual point xi is a d-dimensional vector. So this, even if you subtract the mean from it, so let's say I have 1.23. If you subtract the mean from it, this would be, you'll get again a d-dimensional point there. If this is not clear to you, let me know. What you're doing is you're trying to subtract the So I'm looking at this first entity. Let me just open this. This would be like much clearer there. So I have whole square. So my data points were, I think, 2, 3, and 3, 4. So let me just represent this first entity here. This first entity is going to look like 2, 3 minus, I think it was 5. Let me just go back. It was 5 by 2 and 7 by 2. So 2, 3 minus 5 by 2 and 7 by 2. So this is, and similarly, this would be now, I mean, you'd subtract 2 from 5 by 2 and 3 from 7 by 2. And this is now I mean, basically the transpose of it. So this is now a row vector. Okay. So yeah, if you take this product, this would come down to, I think that there is like some mistake here. So this would be actually this, not this. Let me just make a correction here. So essentially, the mistake here is, 1 second, please. So the mistake here is the transpose should come here. If your X is a column vector, we know that the variance is nothing but a scalar quantity. This, if you compute the variance of your data set, you will get one single quantity there. So if your X is a d-dimensional vector, if you compute xi minus x bar transpose, so in our case we had basically a 2-dimensional vector each. So if you compute xi minus x bar, so this is going to be a row vector now of size 1 cross 2. Basically, with each entity, you'll be subtracting the mean. And this is now going to be a column vector. Sorry. Again, I'm making the same mistake. So this is going to be a row vector. So this row vector, as you can see, has a dimension of 1 cross 2. See, we have to ensure that because it's a scalar quantity, so there has to be one resultant. And this would be 2 minus 3 by 2 and 5 minus 7 by 2. I mean, you can do the matrix multiplications easily. So if you multiply this 1 cross 2 with 2 cross 1, you'll get up ending a scalar quantity. So this is for your first sample. Similarly, if you go to the second sample, I think the second sample was 3, 4. So if you look at the second sample, again, you'll repeat the same process. We are trying to look at xi minus x bar whole transpose into xi minus x bar. So this was 3 minus 5 by 2 and 4 minus 7 by 2. This would be multiplied with a column vector 3 minus 5 by 2 and 4 minus 7 by 2. This would again boil down to a 1 cross 1 entity if you multiply these two. So let's say this number comes out to be, say, m. And in this resultant, let's say, came down to n. So m plus n would be nothing but the variance of your data. Okay. I hope this is clear to you. Okay, let's come back to this. So we are interested in figuring out. 1 second, please. So we are interested in figuring out a new space or a new dimension U1, a new axis U1, which maximizes our variance. Now, if you look at this, so just a correction here. I mean, you can, if you assume your data to be, let's say if you assume your data to be in a t-dimensional space, basically if it's a column vector, if each point is a column vector, so the formula would be the transpose would be here, and here there would be no transpose. If you assume your each data point to be basically a row vector, basically if it's a 1 cross D, I mean, if you represent each data point as a 1 cross D, then the formula would be this. So just, I mean, if you know matrix multiplications, you can change your formula accordingly. So just for your reference, if you represent each data point in a d-dimensional space, the transpose would come here. Okay. Now, for simplicity's sake, let's make one change. We'll ensure that our each data point is now represented as a row, and each row has d such features. So we can use this notation consistently in our subsequent slides. So our goal is we want to maximize our variance along this new dimension u1. Okay. So if our dimension is u1, along which we try to maximize, I mean, our basically along which we are trying to maximize the variance of our projected data. So how do you compute the variance in this new projected space? See, in this original space, so this is the original space, right? Along which you can compute the variance. Now, how to compute the variance in the projected data? That is what we are interested in, right? So if you look at, say, let me just call this u1 as a vector with the entities, say, 3 and 4. So basically, this means that it has 3 components of x1 and 4 components of x2. So this u1, basically, if you look at in this figure, so if you look at this figure, if this is your u1 and this is your x1 and this is your x2, so this u1, let's say, is comprised of, let me just extend this here. Sorry, my bad. So this is x1, this is x2, this is, let's say, your u1. So this x1 is, this u1 is comprised of 3 units of x1 and 4 units of x2. So u1 is 3 units of x1 and 4 units of x2. If you want to represent it in matrix format, this would look like a column vector. So this is how you would represent a u1. Now, if I have a data point, so this is a u1, and if I have a data point, say x somewhere here. So this is, let's say, my data point, some 2-dimensional data point. Let's say the value is, say, 5,6. Let me just change the values. Let's say it's 2,6. So how do I project this point 2,6 to this axis u1? So how do you compute it? So what you're going to do is that you are going to compute. So essentially, if you project this 2-dimensional point on this, basically on this axis u1, you will end up with just one entity, right? Basically one scalar entity. So if you look at this, so what you will essentially do is that you are going to compute. Sorry, I'm making one more change here. I am using still this column vector notation. So if you remember, we started with each data point as a column vector notation. So if I use this notation, 2,6, what you will do is you will try to compute u1 transpose x. What is u1 transpose? So u1 is our 3,4. What is x? X is 2,6. And if you compute u1 transpose, this would be 3 into 2 plus 4 into 6. Whatever this quantity is, basically 6 plus 24, so 30. So this is like the projection of this 0.2, 6 on this axis U1. So this U transpose X is the projection of this 2, 6 on this axis U1. So if we want to maximize the variance in our projected space, so what are we going to do? So look at this. If this is the variance, so if this is the variance in the original space, which you can write it like this. A transpose, this is the transpose term. So if this is the variance in the original space, the variance in the projected space would be U transpose Xi minus U transpose X bar. Obviously, you would, project the mean also in the projected space, right? Or you can say I'm recomputing the mean in the projected space and then subtracting it and then taking a square. So this you can write it as U transpose Xi minus U transpose X bar into U transpose Xi minus U transpose X bar whole transpose. So this is what we are interested in computing, basically the product of these two terms. I hope this is clear. So we are interested in maximizing the variance in the projected space. Okay. And just a second, please. I'll wrap this to make it more clear. So one second, please. So this is our variance in the projected space. So U transpose Xi denotes the projection of point Xi along the axis U1. U transpose X bar denotes the projection of the mean of the original data set onto this axis U1. The square of it, because we are trying to compute the variance. So if you represent this the same way, because U1 transpose is basically U is a constant, each individual component is a constant, you can write it like this. And what is this original term here? This is nothing but your variance of your original data. So if I write this term, this will be converted to 1 by n summation of U1 transpose. If I write this as the variance, U1 transpose into U1 transpose sigma into U1. Because if you look at this term, so if you look at this middle term, this is nothing but the variance of your data that we are trying to compute. There is like this one combined with this 1 by n. See, U1 is a constant. So this can be rewritten as U1 transpose sigma into U1. So this is what our goal is. So our goal is to figure out that U1, which is trying to maximize the variance. So this is our optimization, U1 transpose sigma U1. That is what we are interested in maximizing. Now, if you remember, I discussed in the very beginning that we try to ensure that the norm of U2 is the norm of this axis U1 should be equal to 1. The norm means that going back to that. So we try to ensure that the norm is equal to 1. And if you remember, the norm is, so if there is like two quantities, let me just write these as, this would be an incorrect representation. Let me just write it as alpha 1, alpha 2. So if this is this, so if U1 is written as alpha 1 x1 plus alpha 2 x2, where x1 and x2 are your original dimensions. So the norm, if you remember, is alpha 1 square plus alpha 2 square. Now handling this square root term. So handling this square root term is a little, you can say, becomes a little clumsy mathematical wise. So what the authors have done is they just take the square of it So in order to ensure that they maximize this alpha 1 square plus alpha 2 square. So what they do is they try to ensure that this alpha 1 square plus alpha 2 square is 1. See, even if you square this entity, see, if you set u1 to be equal to 1, and if I just square this entity, this is like the notation for it. If you square this entity, because 1 square is still equal to 1, right? So our goal is to ensure that this alpha 1 square plus alpha 2 square still stays close to 1. Now, why stays close to 1 is so basically why we are adding this constraint. That is the question, right? Now look at this. Just a second. So look at this equation that we have at our hand. So look at this equation. So we are trying to maximize this quantity. If we try to maximize a quantity, basically, let's say we want to approach this quantity, as close, we want to make this quantity as high as possible. So because you know that u1 is, having coefficients. So what values of these coefficients you would want? I'll rephrase this statement that I just made. So u1 has certain coefficients. These will be multiplied with your variance of your data. Again, multiply with some coefficients. Whatever resultant that I get should be maximized. So let's say these coefficients are, let's say alpha 1, alpha 2, and so on and so forth, depending on the number of dimensions that you have. Now, what should be the values of these coefficients so as to get the maximum, this quantity that you get at the end, that should be maximum. So what should be the coefficients in that case? Can you tell me, like, what kind of values would you want for these coefficients if you want this entire product to be maximized? Any ideas?
Well, if you make it less than 1, then when you square it's gonna be even more less than 1. So
No, see, all I'm saying is if I substitute, so let's say there is no such constraint for now. I'm
okay.
trying to explain the reason for that constraint. Why do we have that constraint? So if you look at u1, you have certain coefficients, right? So now if I add, let's say alpha 1 to be infinity, alpha 2 to be also infinity, or a very high number, or let me just give you let's say a counter example. Just 1 second, please. So if I take alpha 1 to be 3 and alpha 2, let's say just there are 2 dimensions only. If I take alpha 1 to be 3, alpha 2 to be 4, there is another case where I take, say, alpha 1 to be, say, 9 and alpha 2 to be 10. In what case do you think this product would be maximized? See, your variance, this sigma term that you see, this original variance is going to be a constant. Do you agree or not? It is not going to change because the data set which is given to you, the variance for that data set would remain a constant. What you are going to do is you are going to multiply these individual entities in U1 with those, with the variance, which is nothing but a constant. So under which case the value would be maximized. If I use, say, 3, 4 for alpha 1 U2 or 9, 10 for alpha 1 alpha 2.
9, 10.
That is what I am coming at. So if you do not restrict your, the idea is if I just use this expression U1 transpose summation U1, and if I maximize this expression, ultimately what you will get to, ultimately what you will do is you will get to a point where you will see that the values in U1, which are nothing but alpha 1, alpha 2, they go to infinity, the values are not converging because our goal is to maximize this. So just to ensure that we converge to a point. So we try to ensure that the norm of this vector is equal to some quantity. In this case, for mathematical convenience, we take it to be 1. So that is why we add this constraint. So if you look at this, that is why we add this constraint that alpha 1 square plus alpha 2 square should be equal to 1. This is the reason we have this norm constraint to be set to 1. I hope I have given you some intuition of like why we add this constraint, just to ensure that the individual coefficients do not become as large as possible. Okay. And on also, if you look at it from say an interpretation perspective, if you have a data point, or if you have, let's say, a set of data points which are zero centered, basically centered around origin, if you try to figure out a axis u1 along which you want to project this data, essentially we are not worried about the amplitude of u1. And what is the amplitude? Is nothing but the norm of u1. We should not be worried about this norm of u1. What you should be worried about is the direction. The direction, see, if you remember, any vector that you have has two components, the direction and the amplitude. We want to project our data onto one direction where the variance is maximized. So we do not really care about what should be its amplitude. So that is why, that is like another interpretation of why you would want to set the norm of u1 to be 1. Just to solve that expression that comes. So that expression that we have is maximize u1 transpose summation u1, and subject to the constraint that norm of u1 should be equal to 1. And this notation that you see means that, so if there are just two coefficients, so if u1 is alpha 1, alpha 2, so this is what we are interested in. This is what the constraint is, and we are interested in maximizing this equation. Okay. 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Now I hope you remember Lagrange multipliers. I asked you to study them. One second. So if you have, so let me just call this equation fx. So our equation was maximize this u1 transpose this variance u1 subject to this this axis that we have u1, because u1 is our variable here that we are interested in maximizing. So different u1s will get me different variances. I am interested in finding that u1 which gives me the maximum variance. And I have a constraint, let me call this constraint as gx, where the norm of u1 should be equal to 1. So essentially, if you look at u1, so this is nothing but u2 transpose u1 should be equal to 1. And because we are squaring it up, so this is, just to give me a second. So this is our constraint. So if our u1 is alpha 1, alpha 2, and I say that I'm interested in finding out alpha 1 square plus alpha 2 square. Oh, sorry, just 1 second, please. I said to you that alpha 1 square plus alpha 2 square should be equal to 1. How do I write it in matrix format? So if you represent u1 transpose u1, what is it? This should be alpha 1, alpha 2. So this is your u1 transpose. And this is your u1. Now, if you compute this, what will you get? If you compute u1 transpose u1, what you will get is alpha 1 square plus alpha 2 square. See, this alpha 1 quantity would get multiplied with this alpha 1. This alpha 2 quantity would get multiplied with alpha 2. So that is how I can write this as u1 transpose u1. So our fx is, just dropping this, give me a second. So our fx is this. So our fx is this quantity and our gx is u1 transpose u set equal to 1. Now Lagrange multipliers say that if you have a function subject to some constraint which is equal to 0. So just to ensure that this constraint is equal to 0, I am going to write it as u1 transpose u. So this becomes our gx. So if you have a function fx subject to the constraint gx equals to 0, you can solve it with the help of a Lagrange multiplier. So you write this equation as fx plus lambda gx, where lambda is called as, so if you look at this lambda, so we are still maximizing this function with respect to u1. The only change that we did is we added this constraint gx with a Lagrange multiplier. So this lambda is called as a Lagrange multiplier. And now we try to figure out the value of this lambda in order to maximize this equation. So, okay, so do you remember, like, if I give you any function, how do you maximize or minimize a function? If any function is given to you, what steps do you follow in order to maximize or minimize a function?
Differentiate it and equate it to 0, and then find the double differentiate, and if it is positive, it is minimum, and if it is
the double differentiation is like just a check, right?
yes, sir. But yeah, for differentiating it once and equating it to 0.
Yeah, correct. So the same thing that we would do, we are interested in maximizing this equation with respect to the variable, with respect to the variable u1. So to maximize this, we will differentiate this with respect to u1. So let me just go to the next slide. So we are going to differentiate this. So let me just call this whole equation as j. So I'll be differentiating this with respect to u1. So with respect to u1. So if you differentiate this, you will get 2 times covariance matrix into u1 plus this. If I write it like term by term, really sorry. Just give me a second, please. It's very difficult for me to work on this. 1 second, please. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just rewrite it. Rewrite this whole equation. So u1 transpose sigma u1 plus lambda 1 minus lambda into u1 transpose u1. Now, if you differentiate this with respect to u1, you will get one entity here and you will get one entity here. This term will go to 0 because there is no component of u1. So if you differentiate this j, so this is your j, and if I differentiate this j with respect to u1, this term lambda 1 would go to 0. What is the differential of this term? This is nothing but 2 times the covariance matrix u1, and the differential of this is 2 times lambda times u1. Now, what do? You differentiate it and equate it to 0. So if we differentiate it, this is the differential 2 times summation u1 minus 2 times lambda u1 is equal to 0. So if I equate it, what we get is sigma u1 equals to lambda u1. So this is what we get. I hope this is clear to you, like how we got to this point. I'm just going to rub everything again. Just to ensure that I need to write some more stuff on this slide. Okay. So differentiating and equating it to 0, we get to this point that summation u1 equals to lambda 1 u1. What is this? This is nothing but the equation of a eigenvector. It is, in mathematical terms, it is also known as, the terminology is eigenequation. I hope you went through what are eigen values, what are eigenvectors. So essentially what this equation means that, mathematically speaking, this u1 is an eigenvector of your variance matrix sigma. So u1 is an eigenvector of the sigma, and the value associated with this and the eigenvalue associated with this eigenvector is lambda 1. So mathematically, this notation or this equation tells you that U1 is a basically an eigenvector of sigma, and its corresponding eigenvalue is lambda 1. Now, just take a look at this. I'm going to do some small tweaks to make you understand. So far what we have is sigma U1 is equal to lambda U1. So let me just make a small tweak, okay? To help you better understand like what is really happening. So essentially what we want to do is we want to maximize this whole equation. So in order to maximize this whole equation, we want to get to this value of lambda 1. Because we want to substitute it and then only we can solve this equation, right? So I'm going to do a small trick here. I am going to multiply. So we have the equation sigma 1, sigma U1 equals to lambda 1 U1. I mean, they have just in this slide, the notation lambda is replaced with lambda 1. That's it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply U1 transpose on both ends. That is the trick that I'm going to use. And because lambda 1 is like a constant, so I can write this as lambda 1 transpose, lambda 1 into U1 transpose U1. Can you tell me what is this? What can you rewrite U1 transpose U1?
Square.
U1 square. What is U1 square?
1.
1. So basically this boils down to lambda 1. So now let's say if I substitute this here, what do I get? So I get something like maximize U1 into U1 transpose sigma U1
minus
plus
lambda.
No, I'm substituting the value of lambda again in this equation.
Acha, okay.
Let me just rewrite this whole equation. So this would be U1 transpose sigma U1. It's the same thing that you get here. Essentially, the first term is nothing but your lambda itself. If you look at it carefully, the lambda value that we get. So if you look at the value of lambda 1, which is nothing but U1 transpose sigma U1, this is equivalent to the first term that we have. So if you substitute this, what do we get? Give me just one moment. I'll write it on the other slide, okay? So we have U1 transpose sigma U1 plus lambda 1 into 1 minus U1 transpose U1, okay? So let me just substitute this value of lambda 1, which is similar to this. I mean, exactly same as this quantity. U1 transpose sigma U1 into 1 minus U1 transpose U1. So what do we get? U1 transpose sigma U1. Okay. Do you know about, did you study Lagrange multipliers? When I told you about like studying about Lagrange multipliers, did you go back and study about those? Do you know about the complementary conditions of Lagrange multipliers? Anyone who knows about it, or at least if you don't, at least let me know. That's the reason I asked you to study about Lagrange multipliers. Okay. Even if you don't, I'll give you a intuitive explanation. Okay. U1 transpose sigma 1 plus this would be U1 transpose sigma 1 minus this U1 transpose sigma U1 into U1 transpose U1. This is nothing but your 1. What do we get? We only get, so this quantity gets cancelled out. So what do we get? U1 transpose sigma U1. So ultimately we end up maximizing this whole thing again. I mean, so basically whatever value of lambda 1 came out, this ensured that we are left with this only the first term. And this is what actually Lagrange multipliers tell you, or you can say the complementary condition of Lagrange multipliers is, this is in the machine learning jargons, it's called as the complementary, you can say a condition of Lagrange multipliers. And the complementary condition says that this term that we have, the lambda gx term that we have. So we were actually maximizing fx plus lambda gx, right? So the complementary condition of lambda gx says that at the optimum, lambda gx is equal to 0. At the optimum value that we want to achieve, basically at that value of lambda, where we end up getting the maximum value, at that thing, there is this complementary condition of Lagrange multipliers, which says that lambda gx is equal to 0. So what do we have now is, like, coming back to this point, ultimately we end up getting. So ultimately we end up getting maximizing U1 transpose sigma U1. This is what we end up getting, right? I mean, if you solve this. And what is this? Maximizing lambda 1. Right? So you substitute lambda 1 in here, you will get this quantity. And what is this? This is the lambda 1 quantity. And now we are interested in maximizing this lambda 1. So what does it mean? So we are interested in, and if you remember, what is lambda 1? Lambda 1 is the eigenvalue of an eigenvector of covariance matrix sigma. So ultimately what we want to achieve is we want to figure out that value, that eigenvalue, which maximizes, basically we want to maximize this eigenvalue lambda 1, right? So we want to figure out an eigenvector whose eigenvalue is maximum. So this mathematical notation, or this mathematical thing that we just did, the whole proof that we just did, boiled down to this one statement: figure out that eigenvector which has the highest eigenvalue. This is what we end up getting. So how do you, so I hope you know how to solve, or how to, so given a matrix or given a square matrix, you figure out the eigenvectors and eigenvalues. I hope you know that. Okay. So interestingly, we will try to pick up. So let's say I have a data set. Let me just call this data set as, say, some D cross N data set where D features are there and N samples are there. Basically, N rows are there. You can have a N times D notation. That's also all right. I hope you know how to compute variance. I just showed you with an example earlier. So if I call this matrix as X, the variance would be X transpose X. And because you are multiplying X with X again, this is also called as covariance. Co means the same, basically. You are multiplying X with X again. So this is also called as covariance in machine learning terms. So essentially, if I figure out this matrix X transpose X, this is our covariance, and we are interested in finding the eigenvectors and eigenvalues of this matrix X transpose X. I hope this is like clear so far, because from the proof, what we got was we are interested in finding that eigenvector who has the highest eigenvalue. I mean, we were trying to maximize this lambda 1, right? Ultimately, it came to this, that figure out that particular basically figure out that particular lambda, which has the highest value. And what is this lambda? Lambda 1 is nothing but an eigenvalue of an eigenvector of this covariance, of this variance matrix, or this covariance matrix sigma. I hope you know how to compute eigenvectors and eigenvalues. If you don't, I'll just take, say, 10 to 15 minutes on this particular topic. Again, on how to compute this. I'll give you a mathematical intuition. If you remember, I'll just give you a quick recap. Just give me 2 more minutes. So let's say this is our X transpose X, where X is your original data set with the dimension D cross N. Okay. And this is our matrix, basically sigma. Let me just substitute some values in it. Okay, do you remember how to compute eigenvectors and eigenvalues from a matrix?
A minus lambda equal to 0.
A minus lambda equals to 0. So if this is, let's say, a 3 cross 3 matrix, let me just take some values, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 5, 6, 7. So essentially what you're going to do is you are going to multiply, basically subtract lambda from the diagonal values. And then solve for lambda. You compute the determinant of this matrix A minus lambda equals to 0. Figure out what lambdas are, and corresponding to those lambdas, you can figure out what the corresponding eigenvector is. So this is how you. I hope you would have studied this in, I think, maybe Maths 1 or Maths 2. I hope you have. Have you or have you not?
We have, so we have.
Okay. Now, there is one issue with this approach. The issue is let me just talk about the issue. So let me just rub this first. So the issue is actually this sigma that you see. See, this sigma is X transpose X. What is the dimension of X transpose? N times D. What is the dimension of X? Just give me a second. 1 second. If I assume this X to be, so let's say if I use row notations, again, see, I don't want to make you guys confused. My X is, let's say, this data set. I'm using row notation for now. So this means that each sample will be represented as a row. So there, let's say there are n samples and D rows, D columns. So basically each column is a feature. So this is n times D. X transpose would be D times n, basically just converting columns to rows. If you compute X transpose X, this is going to boil down to a D cross D matrix. This is what your sigma is, the variance matrix. Remember, okay, can you tell me, can you figure out an eigenvalues and eigenvectors for any matrix? Do you remember that? Like you can only compute eigenvectors and eigenmatrices for a specific kind of a matrix.
Something to do with the determinant.
No. The way the way this eigen formulation is devised is it only works with square matrices. You cannot apply. You cannot, and the matrix has to be symmetric. So if you look at this, if you look at this sigma, which is a D cross D matrix, look at any entity ij. Let me look at ij. What is sigma? Sigma ij. This is essentially telling you. So this is essentially telling you. Let me just write it this way. Sorry, 1 second, please. So this is essentially telling you, or let me just use another notation because I want to use I as a subscript, or rather, let me just use it. So let me just say M. Xjm minus xim transpose whole of M outside. This is our one entity sigma ij. Basically, what we are trying to see is that, oh, sorry, I made a mistake. I'll go to the next slide and write it again. My bad. So if I write sigma ij, this is equivalent to xi xj sigma over m. So m is the iterator basically. What you are doing is you are trying to add so let's say if one feature is xi, so this is one column. Let me call this feature as xi. This is another column from your data set, which is xj. Some values are there. Let's say, let me just take some random values. So these are some random values in your features xi and xj. Each individual cell in your matrix, this sigma ij, is telling you that 1 into 2 plus 3 into 4 plus 5 into 7 plus. So basically what you're doing is you're taking the sum of you're taking the sum of element-wise multiplications. So what is this telling us? This is telling us how feature I. Okay, so look at this. So let's say this sum comes out to be 100. Okay, let's say this sum comes out to be 100. This value is actually telling us how feature I is varying with respect to feature J. Can you comment on if this final sum comes positive? Can we, or let's say if it can come down to a very large value, it can also come down to a very large negative value. It can also come down to 0. So can I make a claim that if it leads to a very big or very large value, then if I increase something in I, it is the corresponding value in J would be very large. Do you understand the statement? So the statement that I'm trying to make here is I am trying to figure out whether making a change in I leads to a positive change in J or a negative change in J. So I'm going to make this statement in general. So if I increase some value in I, do I see the corresponding value in J to have an increasing impact or a decreasing impact, or there is no effect at all? So that is what I'm trying to infer. So this product that you see, this scalar quantity that you see at the end, tells us that how much impact I has on J, the other way around is because this quantity is symmetric actually, and how much impact J has on I. You can say it both ways around. So if this comes down to a very high value, you say I and J, they have a, stronger positive correlation. So if you increase I, some value in I, it is going to increase the corresponding value in J as well. So both have a positive correlation. If the final sum comes down to a negative value or maybe a large negative value, then you say that it has a negative correlation. So if you increase one value in I, the corresponding value in J will get decreased. So they have a negative correlation. If this value comes, if this value comes to be very low, then you say that they have no correlation at all. Okay. Now, one thing that we started with, so don't forget that our features xi and xj, they are standardized and mean centric. We have standardized these features. They are also, origin centric. So before even computing this covariance matrix or variance matrix, you ensure that these quantities are mean centric and standardized. So taking these random values will not be appropriate. So all these values that you would see would be somewhere between 0 to 1 or -1 to 1, depending on what standardization you have used. So this is it for today. We'll continue it from here. If you have any questions, let me know. We'll talk about I'll give you an intuition of like how you can convert a particular data set into its eigenvectors and eigenvalues, and then you know that which eigenvectors to choose that has the highest eigenvalues. So that is like the intuition of PCA. I'll try to give you a quick recap, and thereafter we'll begin with SVM in our next lecture. So any doubts we can discuss. I mean, or if you don't, you can move to your next class. So if you want to discuss anything about today's lecture or even prior lectures, we can discuss. Otherwise, you can go to your next class. Okay. So I'm leaving this session. If you want to discuss, you can unmute. You can even type it in the chat window right now. All right. Bye, guys.